Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. We'll just be waiting another moment or two whilst people do connect to the room. So just hold on tight, and we'll just get started in just over a minute's time. Okay, I think we're going to get started. We have a lot to get through this evening. As you can imagine, there's so much to talk about applying to medicine, and particularly for you all on the call who are international students. We have so much top tips and recommendations we want to share with you this evening. So we are going to get started. Just wanted to introduce myself to kickstart. So my name is Hayley, and I'm here from the Medic Portal this evening, and I'm joined by the wonderful David Prowse from University of Hertfordshire Medical School. A bit about me before I hand over to David as an introduction. I'm one of the senior university advisors here at the Medic Portal. I've worked with over 500, approaching 600 students get successful into UK medical schools and overseas medical schools. So have a lot of experience and a lot of anecdotes to be able to share this evening about how to particularly strengthen your applications as international students in accessing some of the world's best universities here in the United Kingdom. And give you as many options as possible to choose from. That's a bit about me. David, I'd love for you to just share with the webinar today a bit more about yourself.
Oh, hello, everybody. My name's Dr. David Prowse. I'm an academic at the University of Hertfordshire. I'm a cancer biologist by background, but I'm also the academic admissions lead for the medicine programme at the University of Hertfordshire. And I've been at this university for 10 years. And prior to that, I was at Queen Mary, University of London, where I was also involved in parts of the London Medical School. So I've got a reasonably long background working in medical schools in the UK. And at the moment at the University of Hertfordshire, we are establishing a new medical school. So I'm very much involved in the admissions process there and supporting international students as they apply to us.
Yeah, brilliant. And thank you so much for joining this evening, David. It's fantastic. And we're looking forward to hearing a lot more about Hearts as we get through the presentation. So just for a bit of housekeeping, our presentation this evening is going to start off with the Medic Portal, giving that introduction to international students' applications to medicine. And we have lots to get through. We're then going to have a wonderful spotlight on Hearts as a medical school and giving you some wonderful opportunities there to perhaps that be your medical school that you want to choose in your future, and learn all about that from David here. If you do have questions at any point throughout the webinar, please feel free to use the Q&A function at the bottom of Zoom here, and I will then go through the questions at the end and moderate those for myself and for David. So do feel free to put in your questions throughout, or indeed wait until the end of the presentation. So without further ado, let's make a start. So as I said, I've already introduced myself, but just to give you a bit more of a visual here, I've been a trusted advisor for over a decade, working with students in high schools, not only in the United Kingdom, but also around the world, advising students on a one-to-one individual basis about their applications to a whole range of programs. But I've really developed a bit of a specialty and a niche in supporting medicine applicants. I've helped so far as approaching 600 now, and a significant majority of those have been international students. So really, really knowledgeable, and looking forward to sharing with you my experiences and recommendations this evening. This is my proposed plan for the evening. As I said, we've got lots of different sections to get through, starting off with just a bit of an appraisal about the UK healthcare system, the UK education system in regards to medical school training, and then going into more specificities about the medicine experience, such as life as a medical student, the tuition and living costs that are needed to be aware of for international medicine applicants, The application process, of course, for international students, and to really help you understand exactly what is ahead for you that you need to be aware of to help you get into medical school. And then the spotlight on Herts Medical School before we finish up then with an appraisal as to how the Medic Portal can help you to convert this dream of becoming a medical student in the United Kingdom into a reality. So let's get started then with this just introduction to the UK healthcare profession. And it's really, really important that international students are knowledgeable and aware of this, because this is an underlying expectation of all medical schools and will be expected to be understood from personal statements as part of your UCAS application and indeed the interviews. So the UK healthcare system, we do have kind of two parts to it, if you will, being quite simplistic. We have the public healthcare system and the private healthcare system. But the public healthcare system is huge. It is countrywide. It is a world-class recognized healthcare system. And the reputation of that then does then, of course, move into the quality of the education that medical schools in this country can offer. So we are sector leading and world leading, frankly, for our healthcare model. You might have been aware of this, but it's called the NHS, the National Health Service. A little bit of history about this, just for you to be aware as to why we have such an entrenched public system. So it was created by Health Minister Aneurin Bevan in 1946. The founding principle at the time from the Labour government was that the NHS should be funded by general taxation and national insurance contributions, so taken out of the people's salaries or wages, if it were, and meaning that everybody contributes towards the healthcare service en masse, but that what that means is at the point of needing to use the healthcare service, it is free. And that remains the same to this day. Healthcare services in the public sector in the UK are free to access. That's just a very, very small introduction to the NHS, and you'll hear a lot from me today about what international students do need to be aware of. This is absolutely one of them. I've put there just a quick link to give you more information on our website, where we go into even more history and more information for you to be aware of. So just keep that in mind. A little bit further about this and how this actually does implicate your chosen medical schools is an awareness of the geopolitics of the United Kingdom, if you will, because we are split into 4 different nations. And with that being a devolved matter in health, we have 4 different healthcare boards, if you will, under that same NHS banner. So if you're applying to a medical school in England, the NHS England will be the one that applies to you. Likewise, if you're thinking of a Scottish university, there's NHS Scotland, NHS Wales, and then the health and social care in Northern Ireland for the 4th nation. This is really, really important to be aware of. Again, each of these will have their own constitutions or policies or intentions, strategic plans, and it'll be really important for you if you are interviewed by a university like Herts in England that you are referring to the right constitution or plans in place. Equally, what is, again, wanting to have students talk about is an understanding that the NHS is by no means perfect. It is a superb international, I guess, one of the most leading and recognised as like equitable for access, but it is by far from perfect. We have significant challenges at the moment, such as insufficient funding with an aging population, there's staff shortages, there's backlogs from COVID, and since then there's been growing waiting times, doctor strikes in recent years as well. And, not to be a pessimist at all here, but these are questions that can be asked at interview of both home students and international students, because they're wanting to assess that international students know what they're getting into, and also show a commitment and an intention to want to work in the NHS in the future. So again, I invite you to have a look at our website. That's just an example of one of the pages that we have there, which give you even more detail from an evaluative lens about the NHS, what is working, what are the current blockers, and lots more information. So that was just a bit about the profession, the healthcare system as it will. Let's take a move now into the education and the experience of medical school and what they can offer you. So the different types of medicine entries in the UK, there are a handful to be aware of, but the main ones that will impact you as international learners are undergraduate medicine entry routes or graduate entry routes. I've put there the codes, which are the UCAS codes. So as you're looking at the different courses, just be mindful of these codes because they do relate to different entry points. So any program that is A100 is undergraduate medicine. That means you can go straight from school in most cases, and depending on the country of your graduation and if your end of secondary school qualifications are recognised and can grant you transition to university. So if you are here studying A-levels, international baccalaureate, those kinds of examinations, you should be eligible for undergraduate medicine straight from high school. This course is usually 5 years in length, sometimes 6 if there are embedded intercalation years, like an extra year for academic research or similar. Whereas the graduate entry medicine route is a bit shorter. It can be 4 years in length or 5 with that embedded intercalation. And the reason why this is shorter is that students who enter as a graduate will have already completed a bachelor's degree in a discipline first. This can be sciences, life sciences, so something like biomedical sciences or genetics or similar. It can also be something entirely different, where there's a number of universities that are happy for students of any discipline. So just on a personal front, my degree many, many years ago now was French and Spanish. And I had lots and lots of people in my class who are now practicing doctors because they converted and applied to graduate entry medicine as a linguist and are now practicing across the country. So it is absolutely possible to enter graduate medicine later, which is great on many grounds, not only if you're a little bit unsure as to whether medicine is exactly the right thing you want to do right now, whether you want to go to university no matter what once you finish school. You might have been unsuccessful in applying to medicine, and graduate entry medicine just gives you more time to put together, and hopefully an even stronger application a little bit later down the road. So it keeps medicine open, but just be aware that the pathway to medicine would just be a little bit longer, the scenic route, if you will. You'd be great to hear that there are over 40 medical schools available to choose from. Not only, obviously, Herts, of course, we're here tonight, but there are over 40 across the country. But there are some important things to be aware of with universities, because some are only open to home students, like UK students. Others are only open to international students. But there are many others that accept both home and international students. And so for those that are able to welcome both students, it's really important to be acknowledging of a government quota that does exist, which caps the number of students that can go to those universities at 7.5%. So in a hypothetical situation that a medical school can take 100 students every year, what that would mean is that basically 92 and a half students, so 92, 93 students, must be home student fee status, and 7 to 8 students only can come from outside of the home fee status. And since Brexit, this has become even more challenging because more students than ever before are now in this 7.5% bracket. I feel there'll be a lot of questions coming through chat. I can see chat lighting up already. I'm happy to speak about this in more depth with any specific questions later. But what this does, I want to highlight, is that the applications to international medical student spaces are incredibly competitive and tight, and that it's in coming to webinars like this and using the Medic Portal and all the expertise that we have, that will be the difference in hopefully giving you that insured place at a UK medical school. So we've done, hopefully, the medical degree, you've applied, you've gotten in, you've graduated. That's brilliant. What is next? I just wanted to give you a little bit of an understanding as to what the current situation is with post-graduation and continued training. So once you finish your medical school, you will then enter what is known as a foundation program. It's a 2-year phase where you'll be known as a resident doctor. Just as a caveat here, this used to be known as junior doctor, but around a year ago, the terminology had been voted to change by the BMA. So these doctors now in that continued next phase of training are called resident doctors. This phase lasts 2 years, as I said. So you have FY1, Foundation Year 1, and FY2. And it helps to bridge the gap between the theory and everything that you've been doing in your degree to the on-the-job application. And you'll be put into 6 different rotations across different specialties within medicine. Once you've completed this, you will then move on to core or higher specialty training, either in a different area of specialist medicine or general practice if you want to become a general practitioner. Depending on your area of specialty, this could look like 3 to 8 more years of specialization, with courses in anesthesiology and psychiatry taking the longest. So let's just take a mini step back and think, what would that look like? So if you go into undergraduate medicine, that could be 5 years, maybe 6 years, plus foundation, so 6 plus 2, and 6 plus 2 plus 8. It could be up to 16 years or even more until you graduate, if you will, as a consultant or specialist in your chosen discipline. So medicine is a long game. It is a lifelong career. And even once you have become this specialist, there will always be a need for you to upskill and to keep learning, because there will be lots and lots of developments in technology or in medical understanding. So you just need to make sure that you are definitely in for the long ride. Let's move on to life as a medical student and the experience that you're going to get in university as a medical student. So the types of medical degrees here in the UK typically combine elements of big lectures in auditoriums where there's hundreds of students listening to one revered professor, seminars which are more like high school classes where there's a smaller group, maybe anywhere between 10 and 20, discussing, debating, practical skill sessions, of course. It's not only about learning medicine, you need to refine those skills in manual dexterity, working with patients, etc. Dissection or prosection, if that's offered at your university, clinical simulations and examinations, as well as working with patients, as I've mentioned. When researching and looking at UK universities on offer, you will want to look at the different curricula that they might offer, and you'll see some key buzzwords like some of these. You might see the word integrated, you might see the word traditional or problem-based learning, and these are the different teaching styles that are on offer by these universities. Now, the Medic Portal, we run webinars all throughout the year, and we will absolutely be having sessions on these. So come and join us for those when the dates are released to learn a bit more about integrated, traditional, PBL, to help you to refine your choices as much as possible. But in a very quick nutshell, traditional is Oxbridge style, basically. So if you're thinking of Oxford or Cambridge, it is 3 years of intensive science training first. And only then in your 4th year onwards do you really start to meet patients and practice those clinical skills. So if you're someone who really enjoys the learning and you want to have that confidence in knowing the underpinning science first, traditional might be for you. On the other hand, problem-based learning is a lot more patient-facing. You might be seeing patients from the very first week. You'll be doing a lot more communication skill sessions, a lot more group work and discussion. So quite the opposite to traditional. Integrated is kind of in the middle of that. It embeds elements of traditional with your lectures, elements of the problem-based learning group work, and brings it all together with other lectures and seminars like the above. So this awareness can really help you to make the best decisions about what kind of medical school will help you to become the best version of your future doctor self. I just really wanted to also highlight that your degree as medicine will be very, very demanding. You know, the timetable you have might be very long days. Obviously, of course, with the taught element as well as the clinical attachments. But there still will be opportunities for you to continue your life outside of the classroom and enjoy extracurricular activities. And in fact, medical schools often encourage us of their students to make sure of a healthy work-life balance, a skill that you will need to refine as you enter the profession to make sure that you can withstand the pressures of medicine by having healthy respite from studying and working in the future. Moving on to tuition and living costs, this is a bit more of the pragmatics that you really need to be aware of when having conversations with your family and your loved ones about this, because studying as an international student in the UK does come with quite a large price tag, unfortunately. These programs are incredibly expensive to run for students, and therefore the costs associated with them are indicative of how much each university will really need to charge to develop and to deliver high quality programs to train you to become the best versions for the NHS. Sadly, the scholarships and bursaries are quite far, and I guess there's really not that many available for medicine and for bachelor programs. Usually funding is there for postgraduate or even doctorate programs. Let's face it, medicine is a very competitive program already. Scholarships aren't needed to be given by universities because they already have lots, quite often too many students wanting to apply to them. So for that reason, studying in the UK is often, almost always, self-funded by family or through private loans when needed. But the tuition fees do differ from university to university, and this is something to be mindful of if this is a big part of the decision-making process for you and your particular context. So I've given 3 random examples here to talk about how they charge differently. So looking at the University of Leicester, at the moment, they have a bit of a split in terms of the costs, where the first 2 years are a bit cheaper than the final 3 years. And it's likely because the final 3 years cost more money in terms of the clinical simulation and development in that phase, whereas the first 2 years might have more of a taught element. So it looks like the first few years are cheaper, and they are, but then of course the fees will increase later on. Whereas somewhere like King's has one set fee for every academic year. It does not fluctuate depending on the year or stage you are in. And the same is true for Cambridge, but something to also be aware of for international students in Cambridge is that there's an extra college fee on top of that. So this is almost, you are paying the college that you are chosen to study in as a stipend for living there, being taught there, and that is applicable for every year that you are in that college. So in all, as you can see, a Cambridge degree at 6 years in length, it could start totaling almost £500,000 to study medicine. So, and need I say that this is just the education alone. It doesn't cover the living costs of living and being in the United Kingdom. So you also need to factor that into mind as well about the maintenance, the rent, the bills, the social life that comes with being a student. It's a really insightful chart of the UK here, showing you the different areas of the country and where it might be more expensive to live, as you can imagine, London and the southeast, or where it's more affordable, if that is a factor to consider. So looking at places in Northern Ireland or kind of the East Midlands as you kind of go further north towards Scotland. So this is an important consideration for many, but also think about the lifestyle differences of, do you feel like you would benefit from being in a vibrant metropolitan city like London or Manchester? Or do you think you'd prefer a bit more of a city or suburban city, more rural experience where London might just be a quick train ride away, but you quite enjoy that slower pace of life? With over 40 medical schools to choose from, There's something for everybody here. So have a look at all of those different options and think to yourself, what is important. So, okay, we've done a little bit about the context of the UK for education and for healthcare. And you're all still here, which is brilliant. I haven't put you off just yet. And I'm only here to just inspire and to make sure that you are fully aware of the context. But let's now move into the application process itself and what that looks like for international students. For those who might not be aware at the moment, you will be applying to UK medical schools through a website called UCAS. UCAS is a central admissions portal. It's a middleman between you as the applicant and the universities. You are limited to 5 choices maximum, but as a medicine applicant, unfortunately, you can only apply to 4 medical schools that offer medicine. So remember at the beginning, I talked about A100, A101 courses. This is where the course is important to be aware of by its code, because you can only choose 4 of these practicing medical courses. The 5th choice is available for you, but that has to be a non-medicine qualifying degree. So in most instances, students might look at something like biomedical sciences, psychology, genetics, but it could be something entirely different. I personally have helped students apply to programs like economics or psychology, physics even. So lots of opportunities to give yourself an extra chance. If there's something else that you are intrigued by and you could see a future of you studying, then you can use that 5th choice as an extra option if you wanted to. But just wanted to also highlight a particular perk for international students in the room tonight, that as well as these 4 medical schools you can choose on UCAS, something that UK and home students don't really have access to is a number of medical schools that do enable direct applications to them through their website, where you don't need to use one of your 4 limits from UCAS. So you can actually have more than 4 medical schools to choose from. I worked with students recently who have actually applied to almost 7 or 8 medical schools in the UK by benefiting from this direct application scheme. So this is a real bonus for you guys to give yourselves even more chances of success. But the one thing that will be important to check, and we'll go through some of this together now, are the entry requirements. I already mentioned at the beginning about what qualifications you are leaving high school with. That will be important, and we'll go through that in a moment. But you'll also see that there are some other hurdles for international students to jump over, and not least because of this 7.5% quota. Medicine is really, really competitive and popular, as you can imagine. So we really need to make sure that you are meeting, if not exceeding, the entry requirements that they stipulate. Just to give you some, again, really interesting statistics here, and I've put the link there to the document if you want to access this. There are different numbers of places available in different universities, and to give you just an idea here, I wanted to just draw a comparison between the University of Birmingham and the University of Cambridge and the data that they offer, and help you to understand, using statistics in your selection can be advantageous. So if we look at Birmingham, there's 28 places for international students out of 380. For Cambridge, there's 22. So on face value, it looks like Cambridge have fewer spaces available than Birmingham, and that is absolutely true. But then if we look at a secondary document, which is from the Medical Schools Council, we can then start to see what the ratios of competition look like as well. Because if everybody only applied to Birmingham because there's more spaces available, then Birmingham would get hypothetically swamped and would really skew the statistics. So it's important to also be aware of the ratios of applications to place as well. And we can see here that Birmingham does have more spaces, but it also has fewer applicants per place as well, of 17.6 international versus Cambridge at 20. The one thing I really want to caveat here is no matter what this data says, you will be your most competitive. So the best way of becoming 1 out of that 17.6 is to choose a university whose admissions policy favours your strongest aspects. What I mean by that is the following entry requirements and how you can really brandish yourself to be the strongest applicant. So for a lot of medical schools here in the UK, you'll read in their entry requirements that they will look for GCSEs or equivalent, so age 16 qualifications. The value of these can differ very, very differently from university to university. So a university medical school like Cardiff will exclusively rank students based upon their GCSE scores or equivalent. So it doesn't matter to them, as long as they meet the bare minimum A-level or IB grades or equivalent, it does not matter. What matters is the education that's already happened at GCSE. So really important to know that, because if you're sitting here today already with GCSEs and you might have straight nines or straight A stars, a place that has such importance on GCSEs could hopefully give you confidence that you might have the highest chance of success at getting to interview based on what you've already done already. There are others, of course, who will look at A-levels and that age 18 qualification with a lot more value. So for places like Cambridge or Queen Mary University London, which have a bit more of a weighting based on your A-levels or equivalent, then trying to optimize and maximize your performance now, if you're in sixth form or in your kind of grade 11, grade 12 equivalent, the work you're doing now will be of increased importance. Doesn't mean that your GCSEs aren't important. They will be there to be seen, but it's for these universities where the A-levels and how high you have in your A-levels really, really do matter. For others, it does not matter as much. And this is where those conversations that we have, with me as an advisor in the Medic Portal can help you to understand these nuances as to where you would be at your strongest. There's also English language proficiency for you to be aware of, and this is through means of submitting a test like IELTS or TOEFL, or perhaps if you have done GCSEs, sometimes GCSEs can count as proof towards English language proficiency. But this is something that is absolutely needed for students who come from countries or education systems that are not taught through the medium of English. Sometimes, even if they are, still be prepared to offer an IELTS or equivalent. I've personally seen some students needing to submit it, even though they have studied in the United Kingdom, just because they're an international student. So just be mindful that this is something that you will need to be prepared for. And I can't go through this presentation any further without mentioning the UCAT. I'm sure you have lots of questions about this, and we can talk about this later, no doubt, but this really is quite possibly the biggest decision maker in an application to medicine and medical schools. So please, please, please do not underestimate its importance. I'll go into a bit of detail about this, but as I've said, the Medic Portal, we have webinars all throughout the year, and there will be separate webinars for every section of this test. So ensure to sign up and come back for all of these that we just don't have enough time to go into tonight. But in a very quick run through, the UCAT is required by almost every medical school in the country. It's a 2-hour computerized test available in test centres in over 100 countries. You'll sit it in the summer break between your final and penultimate year of school. So between year 12 and year 13, or grade 11 and grade 12. And it's from mid-July to end of September. You will be the ones to register for it, not your school. And just remember, you can only have one attempt per academic year. So if you are currently in year 12, grade 11, and you are applying to universities this autumn, you have this summer to take it and only one shot at it. So it is a really, really high stakes examination that preparation and practice is absolutely pivotal to success. There are 4 sections: verbal reasoning, quantitative reasoning, decision making, and situational judgment. All of these are aptitude tests, so nothing really that you are learning in school will prepare you for this. This is almost like an IQ test, testing your intellect and natural ability to think on your feet and answer some challenging questions in a really, really strict time limit. The reason why the UCAT is so, so important is the type of weighting that universities place on it. Some universities will have this as the most and sometimes the only component in their selection to interview. So places might rank students by the UCAS score alone. So don't even read the personal statement. Maybe don't even look at your A levels or your GCSEs at this stage, but all they care about is the UCAT. You'll see then there's a gradation downwards as we approach the lower emphases, where universities might have a minimum threshold or a cutoff, where only the lowest achieving students are deselected for interview. It could be only used in borderline cases, and there are some medical schools out there for you as international students that don't actually use the test at all. But the message does still stand here to give you the best possible shot at getting an interview and getting a place, therefore, in medicine. The higher the score that you can nail in this examination, the much, much better your chances of success. I often have students ask me about what is a high score? What score do I need to hit? And the challenging answer I have for this is that in the vast majority of cases, there is not a set score that you must hit to be successful. The scores fluctuate every year. Now, David and I were speaking about this just before the call, saying that every university has a different expectation. Every year it's different because the scores all relate to the people who have sat the examination at the same time as you. So we can look at previous year's data, like I've got there on the screen, where we can see what the different deciles or every like 10% windows, where students achieved last year as a reference point to help you to make some deductions and some informed decisions. But it's not necessarily relevant to what you need in your application year. And universities will make that quite clear, often on their websites, saying, this is what might have been an historic score for us, but the quality and the likelihood of success of your application is all impingent on the year of your application. So ultimately, given this level of conditionality and hypothetical decision making, having the highest possible UCAS score will mean that hopefully the sky is the limit for you, and it gives you the widest possible options to choose from. I can see a lot of questions coming in at that moment about UCAT, and I will get onto them at the end of the presentation, but I want to make sure I just finish off quickly here on interviews before I hand over to David for his spotlight on hearts. So we've kind of gone through this trajectory of applying to medical school. You've chosen your universities based on their teaching styles and which ones sound right for you. You've looked at their UCAT and entry requirements to make sure that you meet those criteria. Perhaps now, hopefully, you're in the position where you've had an interview invitation, which is absolutely wonderful. And this will be the final hurdle to navigate to get you that coveted place. Want to just spend a little bit of time talking about what the interviews look like here in the United Kingdom and introduce you to one which is a little bit novel and is quite uncommon in other places around the world. So we have three main types of interviews. There might be some others, but generally speaking, we have panel interviews, which are interviews that you may have experienced before in applying to schools or work experiences and internships, typically around 15 to 30 minutes in length. Maybe there are 2, 3, or sometimes up to 5 panel members. So people from the admissions team in that university, maybe some doctors, or indeed other medical student peers, or sometimes members of the public as lay people who will be there to interview you. And it'll be just yourself speaking to these interviewers. There might also be universities that use a group interview where they bring groups of people together and provide them with a discursive question, testing their teamwork, ability to work and communicate well together, and solve a problem. So a typical example, you might have heard about this, is you're stranded on a desert island and you only have a choice of 5 items out of this 10 to choose from that survive. Which do you choose? So it's showing you in a position of being able to work together as a team to advocate for your decisions, acknowledge what people are saying, and come together to an informed and agreeable conclusion. So it's seeing your ability to work as part of what will be your multidisciplinary team in the future. multiple mini interviews is that bonus one I wanted to include this evening, or MMI for short. And it's almost like speed dating where you have different questions with different people on different tables or different rooms even. So every station might be around 5 to 10 minutes in length maximum, and each will have a different theme. So there could be a station on communication skills, and then once the time's up, the bell will ring, you move to the next station, which might be a question on your professional judgment. The same happens again, you then go to a station on empathy and then breaking bad news. So for those visual learners here, you can see here, this is what it might look like. So different stations, and you move round in a carousel, and there are a group of students being interviewed at the same time on different stations. This is such a unique interviewing style. But this is something that Medic Portal we are experts in. We actually write questions for universities for the MMIs, and we run simulations in person as well as online. I appreciate this is something that's quite hard to replicate in school or with family. So, I'm happy to share with you more information, or you can look on our website to learn more about having to practice these MMIs, because once you get to the interview, your application in most cases is a clean slate. So at this point, everybody is equal. The interviewers quite often have not read anything about your application. So they wouldn't have seen your UCAT score, or they wouldn't have read your personal statement or your interviews. So everyone is starting at zero. So it's the performance in the interview that will, in most cases, be the aspect that will then hopefully give you that place. All the way throughout, I've mentioned how the Medic Portal can help you with all of the different parts of your application, whether it's the UCAT, whether it's personal statements, we haven't really spoken about in much detail tonight, whether it's choosing your medical schools. We have resources, webinars, and different packages and opportunities for you to learn more about converting this dream of becoming a doctor into a reality. So something I wanted to invite you to this evening is to join us for a private consultation with a member of the advising team like myself or one of my colleagues to speak to you specifically about your background currently and your intentions, your hopes, your dreams of applying to medical school. And we'll be able to give you a real detailed strategy moving forward of different aspects of the application that you might need to work upon, and how we can then accelerate and amplify your growth and chances of success. We've put here a bespoke discount offer for you for having attended this webinar this evening. So do feel free to take a note of this, and I will show it again at the end. For 20% off if you book one with us by the end of February. Just quote that code if you do call us up or email us in, and we'll be really, really happy to extend this as gratitude for joining us this evening. And I hope to look forward to speaking to some of you in a future private consultation soon. So I'm just going to take this moment to say thank you from my part of the presentation. This will be on the screen at the very end as well. But do take a note of our email addresses, our website, to look at all of that resource and information that I've mentioned this evening. But without further ado, I am delighted to bring Dr. David Prowse back to the webinar here. And he's going to have a spotlight on the University of Hertfordshire as a medical school opportunity for international students. So, Dr. Prowse, I'd be very, very happy for you to rejoin us, and I look forward to hearing lots more about Herts.
Thank you very much. Yes, I'm going to run through around 10 slides, just telling you a little bit about the exciting opportunities at the University of Hertfordshire, and in particular studying medicine with us at Hertfordshire Medical School. So next slide, please. There we go. So Hertfordshire Medical School. We're the first medical school in Hertfordshire. This is a region just north of London. It's about a 25-minute journey by train up to us from the centre of London. And we are part of the University of Hertfordshire. University of Hertfordshire is a large regional university in this part of the UK. And we have a lot of expertise in medical sciences. That's pharmacy, nursing, radiology, biomedical science, all the programs that you would expect to be linked to and working alongside a medicine program. And we're closely aligned with a large number of hospitals in our region and with the NHS goal to double medical school places in England to 15,000 by 2031. And part of that is to improve medicine within our region and to improve our general practitioner. So the first person patient sees often when they're going to seek medical advice in the UK, and to improve the number of general practitioners in our region, as well as wider specialties working in our local hospitals. As any new medical school, we go through General Medical Council, that's the professional body accreditation. So they are supporting us and guiding us in our journey to be a fully accredited medical school with them. And that's a process that takes over 10 years. And they give us our final accreditation as we graduate our first students, but they support us through this journey. And as part of that, we're working with what was St George's Medical School, which is now City St George's University Medical School down in Tooting in London. They are our contingency partner, and we are delivering and teaching their curriculum, which is a fully approved medical curriculum for the GMC in the UK. Because we're a new medical school, we're offering 70 places for international students. So many new medical schools that have established recently in the UK have taken this approach to start with an international cohort while they gain NHS funding for home students, because as was mentioned earlier, it is very expensive to train medical students in the UK, and home students there is a fixed number controlled by the UK government and the NHS. So we will be part of that bidding process when new places become available for home students. In the meantime, we're absolutely delighted to be able to welcome international students to our programme. And our programme is starting this September, September 2026. And as part of that, it was mentioned around accommodation and costs. We are a campus-based university, which is an advantage for many students, and we have a large number of campus accommodation units, some of which are shown here. So what's been agreed for the medicine students is that they have guaranteed accommodation on campus if they wish it for the duration of their course, which for some students just gives them a degree of certainty. They don't have to go out and look for private accommodation. And this is just showing some of our campus facility, and this is all the residential units for students and some sports facilities. Next slide. This is just showing a wider picture of the University of Hertfordshire. So while you're looking at this, have a think about how many students we actually have studying with us at the University of Hertfordshire. Come up with a number, and come up with a number for how many international students. So on this campus, we've got accommodation at the north, at the top of the picture. There's a large green building, which is our life science building. Next to that is our new computing and physics building, which is fully opened very recently, which is a £100 million development the university's invested. And next to that, there's a 4-story building, which is currently undergoing major refurbishment, which is our new, it's just slightly lower. It's the one with the 4 sets of brown windows at the front. So it's that one. Yep. That's our new medical school building, which is going to be fully dedicated to our medical students. So it's quite unusual to have that dedicated space of lecture theatres, clinical skills, immersive settings. And this campus is undergoing further development. There's a further major investment in our health science teaching and a new building coming up in the centre of this campus as well, which will be for our nursing students to improve their facilities as well. What you're seeing there is about a third of our, well, a little over a third of our campus facility. We have a second campus, we're about 15 to 20 minutes walk away, where there's a shuttle bus, where we also have extensive sports facilities, law facilities, business, and further campus accommodation. So we are a very large university relatively in the area and in the region. So if you thought of a number which was around 35,000 students, you'd be right. The University of Hertfordshire has around 35,000 students. Next slide. And we are investing in our medical school and our medical school facilities. As you would expect, we're bringing in digital anatomage tables, VR suites, simulation wards, and immersive labs. So as a new medical school, we can invest in the latest technology, and that's how we expect to teach you. Medicine is a very interactive, busy program. There's lots of interaction with staff. There's lots of clinical skills, communication skills, team-based learning. So there's a lot of contact hours, as you would expect, especially in the first 2 years where you're developing your skills. With many programs like ours, there's early clinical experience, which the NHS has mentioned. You'll go out in placement in the first year for 2 weeks, 4 weeks in the second year, 18 weeks in the third year, and the fourth year of studying with us is nearly full-time on placement in our partner clinical settings, where you're learning from the experts there, being supported by us at the university. And that's a very standard pattern for most medical schools, to build that core knowledge and build the skills and competencies you need to be able to understand and learn to train to be a doctor. If you thought of how many international students we have, it's about half our students are international. So we are well versed in supporting international students across a large number of programs. So we have about 17,000 to 18,000 international students on campus. So again, we have a very big community of international students from a large number of different countries. Next slide. So 35,000 students, 110 different countries. That really does give a dynamic student life. Lots of student societies and opportunities to, at this stage, to come and join a new medical school, to shape your own medical school experience, form those MedSoc societies or equivalent, and really invest in your learning in a modern setting. The picture there shows some of our students and staff members. This will be from our pharmacy, because they're in the simulation pharmacy teaching space, where we've actually on campus, we have a pharmacist set up for drug dispensing. All the drugs and have all empty boxes, but people can learn and practice in a safe environment, and there's a consulting room there. So these are the types of facilities that you have access to in a modern medical university and a modern medical facility. Next slide. Just a little bit more of things I've already said. Guardian ranking top 50 now for the University of Hertfordshire. We are very close to London, so you have the advantage in living outside of the capital of the UK, but being able to commute in and take advantage of all the resources and entertainment that happens there. Guaranteed accommodation and strong NHS partnerships. Studying medicine, you will be immersed in your learning within an NH setting wherever you choose to study. We have very good partnerships across our local hospitals where you will gain that relevant clinical experience, as well as with our local GPs and other clinical providers in our local region. Next slide. So a new medical school, why that might be a great choice? Well, as you've already seen, potential for more places available in a new medical school. So we have 70. Many of the established medical schools have far fewer. Next slide. So it's very competitive. Many more applicants than there are places. A new medical school gives you an opportunity to apply to a place where there could be more places available, as is our case. And because all the programs lead to a GMC approved qualification and sitting the national exams, you will be eligible to go on to the foundation program training within the NHS. So there are just more opportunities, I think, in a new medical school, just simply because there are more places. Next slide. In terms of applications, as was mentioned, each university runs its own application process, and each university runs and looks for slightly different things. So look at the individual universities' websites and work out which one is right for you and which one is best for you. We are, as a new medical school, only open to international applicants, and we are accepting both UCAS and a direct entrance, so that might be an advantage. You've said you can apply to us directly through our website. We require, as most medical schools do, a very high level of academic qualification. So 3As at A level or equivalent must include for us chemistry or biology. But I'd also be delighted if your third A level was art or drama or something with good communication skills, a language. Really, because medicine is all around communication and working with people. So I don't need you to have studied maths. There's no disadvantages you have, but also thinking outside the box a little, there is some flexibility here, especially probably more so in a new medical school. IELTS or equivalent qualifications for English, you've got to be able to communicate in English. So that's really important. And most medical schools will set a high standard for that. And when I've talked to international applicants, most applicants are coming to us with a very high standard of English. So do be prepared for that. As was mentioned, UCAT test, completion of the UCAT test in the year before you apply to medicine is really important. So there is a time frame for doing that. And then we use multiple mini interviews because we are recruiting international students. Our multiple mini interviews are slightly different. They are asynchronous and they are a video-based online recording process. So for us, that gives an advantage to international students in terms of more flexibility. You can record the interviews in your own time, but they do follow the multiple mini interview format. We're looking also for work experience or research that could be in person or virtual. And also it could be volunteering, for example, in a care home or with disabled or disadvantaged children, bringing in something that shows you care, can communicate, and have a level of responsibility. Um, Everybody has to submit a personal statement as well as references, but for us, these are not scored. And are not part of the process leading to your selection for interview. Critical for us are your qualifications, your UCAT score, and then in terms of making an offer, your how well you do in our MMI and multiple mini interviews. Next step, next slide. So as I've said, for us, UCAS and direct, and that may confer an advantage to you because you can make more than 4 direct applications. When you're looking at UCAT, there are the cognitive function tests, the 3 tests, as well as the situational judgment test. Some universities will automatically reject you if you have a band 4. We are not taking that approach. Each university can choose how they interpret the UCAT test. We consider that at this point, the SJT may disadvantage international students because they have less familiarity with the judgments being made. So we are not making a selection on that, but do look at each individual university because each one has their own process for assessing your application, especially the UCAT aspect. We're using, as I've said, bespoke online MMI platform, and that gives a lot of flexibility to which I think suits international applicants and also gives an ability to reduce bias. And we can also, if students need accessibility features like extra time, we can factor that into the application if that's something you already have for your school tests or exams. For example, if you have 25% extra time, you can let us know and we can bring that into that process. So it's fair, flexible, and tailored to both you as an individual, but also to international requirements. Next slide. So GMC accreditation and regulation is really critical in the UK. That is the professional body. And we, as in all new medical schools, follow a tightly regulated high standard pathway, which is closely scrutinized by the professional body. The accreditation assurance, we are working in partnership with a very long established medical school, that's St George's, which is now called City St George's. And they are part of contributing to our team and also supporting us with our curriculum. And we are required to meet the same standards. Our graduates will sit the same national medical licensing assessments as all students now do within the UK when they come to graduate. If for any reason there were an issue, there is also a contingency plan, which means that students will be supported by City St George's Medical School, and there's a legal agreement in place for that. So what that really means is new, doesn't mean unproven. It means more innovative, dynamic, and rigorous quality controlled. and more opportunities in terms of application opportunities as well. Next slide. And that, I'm conscious of time, you've got 2 QR codes up there, one for our website. So you can just go University of Hertfordshire, MBBS, and you'll take through to our web pages where you'll find out lots more details about our application process, our resources, facilities. And if you want to go direct, the QR code there for international entry requirements is also there. So you can go through to that as well. And there you also find email addresses for our MBBS admissions at the University of Hertfordshire, and you can just email your queries to us if I can't answer them in the Q&A or the questions you put in the chat now. I think that's everything I had to say.
Thank you so much, Dr. David Prowse. That's a fantastic presentation. And I think personally for me, I think Hearts looks like such an exciting opportunity for students to consider. You know, brand new medical school facilities, I think will just truly enhance the learning experience of the students. And I think to do so in that kind of like nice campus environment near London is a nice place to be. So you'd be glad to know we've had quite a number of questions coming through. So I am going to go through these questions now. So I'm going to try and kind of bring them together in groups of questions rather than by timestamp, just to have a bit of a discussion. We've definitely had some questions about work experience come in, just looking at the themes here. So with your medical school selections, do you feel like there are any differences in quality or impact between virtual or in-person experiences?
I think from my point of view, it can be quite hard to gain impersonal experiences in a hospital setting. So having virtual experiences, I think, are equally valid, but also try and gain equivalent experiences outside of a hospital setting. For example, I'm very impressed if somebody in an interview says, and I volunteered for a year caring for elderly in a what we would call an old people's home, but in a facility which looks after elderly patients, or I volunteer in a charity setting supporting disabled students or disabled children, and I do that once a week. It just shows a level of dedication and commitment, and also that you're good at communication and you're seeing things in from that side of things. So from my point of view, in a new medical school, I look for that more than the I've shadowed somebody in a hospital for a week. But both things are valid, but do try and gain that wider community experience and bring that to the interview, because it comes over so often as being very impressive.
Yeah, I think just to add to that as well, I definitely feel like when I've been helping students over the years with personal statements, anything that, as David said there, about that communication skills development and the interpersonal nature, that's you developing your own skills where possible. So then you can showcase how you are a superb applicant in medicine. You can learn a lot by observing other professions, of course. You know, if you're there able to have an experience in a hospital observing surgery, that's wonderful about your awareness of the career as a doctor, but it's not necessarily teaching us or teaching you about your own skill set. So I think a healthy balance of the awareness of the profession, but also your own skills development. And it could be in a very, very different context. It doesn't have to be clinical. It could be working, as David said, working with disadvantaged children or communities. But yeah, that's brilliant. Thank you very much. We've got quite a few questions about the UCAT, so I'm happy to kind of answer some of these as well as David, of course. So if the UCAT is like an aptitude test, how is practice and studying beneficial? David, do you have any thoughts or questions about that? I want to make sure we got like a nice triangulated response here.
Yes, I think it's important to practice. I think it's important to look at example UCAT questions, start with their website, and then see where you go from there. The reason why practice is important is a timed assessment, and it is designed to challenge you on time. So as an international student, if you go in without having practiced, you will struggle with the time and you will lose marks. So I think practice is important, and looking at how the questions are structured, what they are looking at, will just help you to be able to do it as well as you can in the time that is there. It is an invigilated test. in person. So you really have to go into it prepared, because it is, for many of the medical schools, including mine, one of the key assessments used to rank applicants in terms of whether they will progress, in my case, to the next stage, which is interview.
Yeah. I'd like to just add to that a reminder that every mark you can gain matters. Every 10 points in the UCAT scoring world can be the difference between that a cutoff if a university implements a cutoff. And as well as the timing element, where there's a lot of questions to read and then answer in very little time, quite a number of the questions are a little bit tricky, and they do utilize what we call as red herrings. So they're putting in fake answers, which might be kind of obvious if you have missed a step in your calculations in math, for example, or if you have just read very, very quickly for gist in the verbal comprehension questions. It's there testing you to make sure that you're doing all of the question in the time frame and not just jumping to a conclusion and then falling at the fake answer. So practice is definitely key to success here, as is the UCAT often the key to unlocking the interviews. Some quick questions about how do you get the results of your UCAT. You get it instantaneously as you finish the test. As you're probably leaving your station, you might get the email already come up on your phone telling you what your scores are. So you find out immediately, and then you can start using that then in your decision progress about which universities you'd like to shortlist. Somebody has a question about extra time. If you have extra time in exams, will you get it in the UCAT? And the answer is you should get it in the UCAT. You'll need to liaise with your school to make sure that you are applying for the UCAT SEN, which allows for those accommodations like extra time or rest breaks, whatever you might have for your other examinations right now. You might need documentation from school or from some healthcare professionals to have that as evidence. So just be prepared to liaise with your examinations officer or your counsellor to make sure that you're applying for the right version of the test. A validity of the UCAT is another question. So it's only active for so if you sit it in that summer break, as I mentioned, between your final and penultimate year, it is only eligible for the application round upcoming. So if a student sits it this summer, it can only be used for the applications for this October's deadline to enter in 2027. If students are wanting to apply for a later round of application, maybe you're here this evening at a younger year group, or maybe you're reapplying to medicine, you would need to take it again the year after. And again, only one attempt to sit it. So that is also where practice is key, as we've both said, to make sure that in this one attempt with no opportunity of resit, you do it as well as possible in that first time every year, and it's only valid for the academic year for which it applies. The questions. Oh, a question here, David, about things like competitions. Obviously, I know, Hart, you say the personal statement is not necessarily scored, but do you read the personal statements as part of the process anyway, just to kind of check the suitability of the student to medicine in the first place, or from your previous experiences, perhaps? Do you have any thoughts on competitions, Olympiads, etc.?
I have two comments. University of Hertfordshire, we will read your personal statement if we're going to make you an offer, but it's not part of, in any way, the selection process right up to the point of making you an offer, and we will not use it as any part of any ranking process, but it does vary by university. In terms of competitions, if you've done something which is relevant, then bring it into your statement and it will potentially stand out at another university. If you've done that, bring it when you have an opportunity in your interview and mention what it is, but keep it focused towards medicine. If you've won a maths competition, for me, I'm more impressed if you've done some volunteering work at your hospital. I'm not as impressed with the competitions. I have seen statements where students have won student Nobel Prizes and they were genuine. So you do see people who have won things which are internationally recognized competitions as well as country competitions. There are some very high caliber applicants applying from around the world who have a number of different things. So yes, anything that makes you stand out, but try and make yourself stand out in a clinical context or something which helps to show that you're good at communication, strong levels of empathy, good at teamwork, those types of things. Because when you come to interview, from my point of view, we're judging you on your academic qualifications primarily. But each university is different, and some will score and rank you on your statement and your reference as well. So each university takes a different approach. We take the approach that we just look at the straight qualifications, because I find it very difficult to compare uh, a maths competition prize in one country versus a prize in a different country. How do you score them? I find that very difficult, so we do not attempt to do that. But if you bring things in the conversations you have in your interviews or things in your statement, make yourself stand out. It's never going to do you any harm.
Great. Just a follow-up question to this. I think you might have answered it, but I just want to make sure this attendee is asking the question. What would you say is your ideal student for Herts Medical School? Do you think is this somebody who's like academically inclined or a more practical student who's done work experience?
Um, for me, my personal, the way we're looking at it, we have a requirement for A-level equivalent biology and chemistry, and then we'd be very happy with a broader subject area which shows good communication skills and ability, but it doesn't have to be. But we want a breadth and a range of people. We're looking for people who are engaged, motivated, and have a realistic understanding of what studying medicine is about and the career pathway. For that, it's really helpful if they have some volunteer or work experience in a clinical or in a clinical related setting. Those things come across really well in interview because it shows a level of maturity and shows an ability to cope with difficult situations potentially. So those types of things come across well, but everybody's coming in with very high academic standards, absolutely excellent English communication skills. Those are a given. So then you're competing right at that top level.
Yeah, brilliant. And I think we have another follow-up question here based on the personal statement. So if a student were to apply to you directly, obviously they'd require a personal statement.
They
Would
would.
you be open-minded to receive basically the same version of what they've already provided for UCAS, or do you require something a bit different, if not, of course, separate?
Same version for us.
Yeah.
It could be absolutely identical to your UCAS statement. It just needs to be your statement and not written by an AI or copied from somewhere else. It's your unique statement. The same way when you come to the interview, it's your unique answers to the process that we're looking for. We're looking for you as an individual to come across as empathetic, showing integrity and strong communication skills.
Would you have any preferences of any tailoring of the statement as it's going directly to Hearts? Like, do you feel like there'd be a benefit of a student advocating why they'd be a strong fit for Hearts, or does
I
that not
think
matter as much?
I think the guidance we've written on, I would suggest, and what we've communicated through our website and everything is the statement is a really good opportunity for applicants to reflect on why they want to study medicine, the skills they have, and the qualifications they have. Both U, UCAS and the Medical Schools Council particularly have very good guidance around statements. But for us at University of Hertfordshire, it is not a deal breaker. The key thing are the qualifications, both GCSE, what we expect there, which is on our website, and then the A-level qualification, either achieved or predicted. And then the key factor coming through here is UCAT and the UCAT scores, and then ranking again on our interview process. So the statement is a good opportunity to reflect on those skills and things you might bring when you're talking about in your interview, but it's not something which is part of our selection process.
Yeah,
So
appreciate that.
for us as a medical school, it is much less critical. Something you have to do, but it's an opportunity as a more of a reflection.
Yeah, absolutely. Got some even more questions coming in about heart specifically, which is brilliant. We have some students asking for any clarity about any GCSE requirements that students need to be mindful of for your medical school.
Yep, I'm just looking at my other screen.
Sure.
Give me 1 second because I the thing about running a live session is not to give the wrong advice. So I'd always say refer back and look at the University of Hertfordshire Medical
I would
School,
agree with that. Yeah.
and that is the um, really best approach to take. I'm going to read exactly what's written on our website here, and it's 2 clicks. You just saw, we didn't see, but I just did 2 clicks and I'm there. A minimum of 5 subjects at GCSE at grade 6 or above to include English, maths, and double or triple science or equivalent. We appreciate many applicants will not have done these, but this is what we're looking for in terms of GCSE. So our key threshold is this is a minimum, but our key criteria is having the A-level score. So we are much more focused on A-level achievement, and this is the GCSE is a minimum we would expect. So you do need to come in with a minimum level of GCSE, but the expectation is many applicants will have higher grades.
Yeah.
Most will, but there is a minimum threshold for us for GCSE.
Yeah. And we had some other questions earlier in the evening asking about Irish specific. I've got a few Irish students on the call, and we've got some specific questions. I will get around to those for you. I do promise. I know we've got a lot in there. One asking about the equivalency, what that would look like for the junior certificate, which is the GCSE equivalent. And I don't think, in my experience at least, on a lot of the university websites, it doesn't go into that minutiae of detail looking at individual country systems at the GCSE equivalent stage. So my personal advice would always be to contact the admissions registry for the different medical schools and ask for an understanding as to what that would equivalent to. Um, would you agree with that, David?
Yes, I would click through onto, for us, onto the University of Hertfordshire website, the MBBS website in particular, and then we do have country by country details of what we expect. But if you have any queries, it's then looking at that website and then clicking through on the email link and emailing one of our admissions team to look at that for you. And so we can give you a comment back about it. But for each university, it's go on their website and look at the information. In terms of the Republic of Ireland and home or overseas fees, I would not make any comment on that, but I would say that is more complicated than qualifications. Um, I have a suspicion I know the answer, but I think, again, home or international, that's a question to email to the admissions team, and then they will then consult with the international team because each university through will make a decision on home international fee status. You should be able to get an idea from UK Council for International Student Affairs, UK CISA, which will give guidance on that. But I would not be in a position to do that because I do not want to give the wrong advice around home versus international because it you can say something, but unless you're a professional expert in that field, you can give the wrong guidance. But look at the university websites and then contact the admissions team so that they can then direct you to the relevant people to be able to give you guidance on that. But Republic of Ireland is particularly complex post-Brexit.
Thank you, David. Whilst we're on the topic of entry requirements for Hearts, we have a student asking for the IB requirements. Do you happen to have your screen up available again, just to quickly answer that question? I'm sure they can find you on the website, of course, as well, but
Yep. Let's see. IB offer, we are asking for 144 points, which will roughly equate to the AAA. So
yeah,
140 points. We normally have or expect to achieve a total score of 36 points, with higher level 6 in chemistry or biology and higher level 5 in a second science, chemistry, biology, physics, or maths. So I
Yeah,
think that's quite standard
yeah,
requirements. But it's
yeah,
all on our website. Everything there is very clear, and you can go on with many universities like ours. You can go on the website and register for updates as well. So you can also see updates. You can also follow us on social media and things like that. And we run our own separate webinars and things as well.
yeah, absolutely.
But there are many different qualifications. Everybody has their own unique set, but have a look on there. And if there are any queries, just contact the admissions team.
Yeah. I have some questions about the foundation year training, and I guess the post graduation routes. So you have a student asking about the foundation years and whether this is a stage where they will start to earn a salary and kind of earn money. Would you be able to kind of give a bit more of an understanding to that question as I just compile some other questions of a similar theme?
Yes. Off the direct, simple answer is yes. So foundation year training in the UK is within the NHS, and you are effectively employed as a resident doctor as you journey through your 2 years of foundation and then on to further training within the NHS system. Um, International students will change their visa status, not visa status, but change their type of visa as they go through that process. But these are all paid training roles once you have graduated from medical school in the UK.
Yeah. And we then have some questions about the length of years for some different specialties, which I can't remember from the exact top of my mind, but maybe you might know, Dr. Browse. Cardiology and psychiatry. I know that psychiatry is amongst the longest in terms of specialty training. So remember in my section, I talked about the 5 or 6 years of undergraduate or even 7 years for graduate entry, plus your foundation, plus up to another 8 years. I believe cardiology or cardiothoracics is not necessarily the longest, but not far off 8 years either. So it's, these are along, in my perspective, some of the most kind of challenging and long-term pathways to take. Um, Looking at David, see if he can glean any more information from any particular of your colleagues or peers that you know might be in these sectors.
I think looking at resources online. So for the
Mm,
foundation program, I would literally go to the UK website, UK Foundation Program, which tells you about the 2 year program there. And then another very good source of information is the British Medical Association, the BMA. So the BMA offer advice and support for both medical students and medical doctors, but they also do explain very clearly the routes through medical training. And it's much better to go on their website because it is up to date and gives you a realistic understanding of where the training routes go and what the process is. So I would recommend the BMA website.
Yeah, so we've had some follow-up questions just based on this conversation now, and I'm going to invite them to also go on that BMA website because you've got questions about can the foundation year have like an international exchange? So could a person do some residency time outside of the United Kingdom? And my gut, I say I'm not saying this is fact, but my gut would say no to that, but I could be completely wrong. And the BMA and other foundation year websites will be the most important to look at there to know whether that is possible or not. But David, are you aware of any arrangements?
I do not know, so I can't comment on that in terms of training beyond medical school and the foundations programs and beyond. I think you would have to look on the BMA website and then have a look at the NHS careers options and the training options there. Um, Many doctors from the UK train, but also study, work, volunteer in a lot of different locations during their careers. The other thing I would say is that many medical programs, when you're at medical school, will have an elective
Mm.
in final year or just before then, where you have the opportunity to potentially do some study or experience overseas as well. So
Mhm.
do also look at where you're applying for medical school, what your options are. Um, there are many different routes through this and in terms of the training opportunity, but I suspect that once you have started your training in the hospital setting, you are very much on, again, a series of steps towards the route, and it's probably easiest to take the most straightforward route to where you want to go.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm just looking at some final questions. Obviously, we've been going now for nearly 90 minutes, which is absolutely amazing. And the quality of these questions are absolutely superb as well. So thank you all so much for your diligence in submitting some of these. And I'm going through typing answers as well as we're speaking to make sure we're going through as many as possible. The webinar will be and has been recorded, and it will be disseminated to you afterwards as well in a follow-up. And I can make sure as well that you have access to the slides if you wanted to look at any of the hyperlinks or QR codes embedded as well. So no worries about that. A follow-up question about Hearts specifically for you, David, is about the tuition fees. Do you happen to know how much a medical degree at Hearts would cost students?
Yes, so again, this is on our websites currently. So I'm just checking to see which section this is under. International applicants section. Um, just checking. So it's got a section on tuition fees. So for international students and EU students starting in academic year 26-27, so this is this September, tuition fees are set at £42,000 a year. As with most medical schools, there can be an annual increase in line with the retail price index. So that's inflation essentially, and that will be no more than 10% each year. So we're starting off with a fee of 42,000, and we require a deposit of £10,000 as part of that. There are some reductions this year, potentially just because it is our starting year, but these are relatively small compared to that. So for the first year, I'm just trying to find where it is. Yeah, just look on our website, but essentially the key value here is starting this year, it's £42,000, but like with all things, I expect going forwards, there will be price increases each year just because of the cost of funding the training in the clinical setting is always the key driver for that.
Brilliant. And are there any scholarships available there, David, for international students, to your knowledge?
As you mentioned, there are very, very few, and I was just trying to find, because I was aware that this year we had one um, reduction, but it was only for this year. And I don't want to quote that because I'm just trying to find it on our website just to check I'm saying it is
Mm.
correct. But like with other medical schools, there are very few large scholarships available. We expect to have some applicants applying where they are sponsored by their home country. So you may be find more opportunity in looking for scholarships and government scholarships to come and study with us. But again, I suspect those are going to be very competitive if they do exist in your home country.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm just going to do a handful more questions now, just in the essence of time, but I'll put up on the screen now if I am just going to move to the slide at the very end because I'd be very, very happy to obviously remind you that we have our email address here, info@themedicportal.com. So if we haven't answered any of your questions this evening, please do continue to send them to us by the email. By all means, mention directly that you've been part of this webinar this evening and you have follow-up questions. My colleagues then in the team will send them directly through to me. I can liaise with David if any are specifically about University of Hertfordshire. I will be really, really happy to help you. It's just obviously with the essence of time this evening. We could go on and on with questions, and they are really, really good questions. So thank you for them. I'm just going to choose one or two final ones just to part, if that is okay, which means I might not be able to get through all of them, but I will do my best to type answers to you at the very least. So we have a question about when would you recommend starting to prepare for the UCAT? Personally, I'm of the pedagogical approach that starting earlier and doing more frequent practice is better than trying to cram it at the very, very end. Um, it's a type of test that will, as David has already said, it needs to have refined time management skills. So doing it personally, if you are sitting the test this summer, if you're intending to apply this October for starting next autumn, I would say that starting around now, even if it's just 1 or 2 hours per week, you're starting to develop that healthy revision and practice process and habit, if you will, to help you. Then you can ramp that up then. So once you're finished with any examinations you might have at the end of year 12 or grade 11, you can then go into that final preparation mode. So I personally would advocate that the students that we work with in the Medic Portal are starting now or have already started. And I would personally advocate that you look at those question banks online. David said there's lots of practice questions out there. We have thousands and thousands on our website as well, free to access, as well as, of course, any packages and other opportunities to join us for our workshops as well. So definitely take advantage of the free online resources on our website at a minimum. And we'd be really happy to help and explore with you possible other options too.
And just around that, just
Please.
look at the UCAT website, because you do have to register. There are very clear deadlines, and you do have to book your test, and they can get booked up. So
Yeah.
make certain you're aware of the UCAT deadlines, and then don't expect to spend 48 hours cramming and do well in the test. It really is giving yourself 3 to 6 months of just thinking about it, preparing for it, and giving yourself enough time to practice, so you become much more familiar and can manage the time pressure.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think on that note as well, just a personal recommendation is to not book it to be as late as possible in that testing window. Personally, I don't do this to scare, but just as absolute fact, I have had students who have been unwell on their testing day, or that there were technical issues, because they do happen. And because it was so late into that September window, there were no more vacancies anywhere for them to take the UCAT. And that means that by default, they were unable to apply to medicine. So the July, like early mid-July to late September is the window. I personally would always encourage students to take the examination before they go back to school. So in July or August, meaning earlier start of preparation will facilitate an earlier sitting of the examination. Once that's done, attention can then turn on to personal statements, interview preparation, and all of those other important facets of the application as well.
I agree.
Yeah. And some final housekeeping questions. We've had some questions about how can students speak to us about booking a private consultation or other package options. Have the email up on the screen here and our telephone. So you can get in touch with the team. And in fact, they'll probably be in touch with you after the registration of the webinar this evening as well. So in that email or phone call, just mention that you are interested in a private consultation with myself or another member of the advising team. If you'd like to learn more about UCAT preparation or our personal statement guidance, whatever it might be, our team are on hand to be able to connect you with our wonderful bank of medical students and tutors and advisors to, as I said, really, really work with you to amplify your chances of, converting this dream of medicine into a reality. So do get in touch with us there at the info at themedicportal.com or the telephone number there, and we would be absolutely delighted to help. So on that note, we could go on and on for hours, and I would absolutely love to this evening, but I feel like we need to make a decision at the moment to direct these questions to email. I am happy to continue answering questions live if you want to. David, I'm absolutely happy to stick around because a lot of the questions remaining now are more about UCAT and qualifications. So I'm happy to stick around. David, if you want to stick around, I am happy for you to also do that. But I want to make sure as well that, you've had lots of opportunities to speak about hearts and everything. So it's entirely up to you if you want to stay, or if not, we can obviously then say thank you.
I will thank you for hosting, and I will drop out. And just
Yeah,
to thank everybody for attending and for their questions and for taking part in this webinar. I have checked my own university's website, and I did remember correctly, this 2026 applications only, because we're launching this year, we do have a scholarship of £2,000, which will just reduce the fees from 42,000 to 40,000 in the
okay.
first year. But
Yeah,
as I say, with scholarships, they are few and far between for most medical schools. So good luck, everybody, with your applications. I hope you found this useful, and do go on the website, both the Medic Portal and the University of Hertfordshire, and find out more information. So thank you
brilliant.
all. And from my
Thank
point
you
of
so
view,
much for
good
sticking
night.
around. Yeah, yeah. Thank you, David. Good night. Thank you so much for joining. Speak to you soon. Bye. Okay, so I am happy, as I said, to stick around just a little bit longer and go through any of the questions remaining. There are currently 12 questions. I will go through these, but if any questions do come up after the call, you are very, very welcome to get in touch with the team, as I mentioned, on the info@themedicportal.com. Specifically mention this webinar, specifically mention me by name, Hayley, and I'll be very happy to help you afterwards as well and direct you. So I'm just going to run through these super, super quickly. And if there are any follow-up questions, then please direct them to the email after today. So a question about examples of universities of value predicted A-level exams higher than past GCSEs. So as I mentioned in the presentation, the ones that come to immediate mind are things like Cambridge and Queen Mary. They will specifically allocate a weighting or a ranking system based on A-level results. So they are quite focused on the more recent qualifications than historic. There are some other universities that have a more holistic assessment of academics across all of the years. So they might look at GCSEs and A levels together. As I mentioned, there are some that look at just GCSEs or just A levels or combination of that. So there is not one, like a standard one size fits all approach. Every medical school has very intricate policies, and a part of my job as an advisor is to speak with students and advise them on exactly the weighting and the level of prominence or value placed on the type of academic qualification, and to have those one-to-one discussions with them, because a student might be amongst the absolute best candidate for one university, but for another, it might be a bit of a hindrance based on how they look at the student, and it might not showcase them in the best possible way. So this is where things like the private consultations we've talked about, as well as future advising, can really amplify those chances of getting to the interview stages by being strategic in those decisions. So that one's done. An ideal IELTS score. So we saw there from Hearts that an IELTS score of 7.0 is what is needed there. I would say that 7.0 is, in the vast majority of incidences, what I would expect from a medical degree. I have seen some universities over the years requiring a 7.5. So this might be part of that entry requirements research that I encourage that you do, where you look at what is needed. And if you feel that a 7.0 is more realistic for you than a 7.5, then you might think that actually that is part of your strategy. So definitely 7.0 for medicine is, I'd say, the minimum you need. It does not matter how far you exceed over it. So it doesn't make you a stronger applicant if you have an 8 or a 9. You need to meet that as a minimum to essentially get your visa, as well as confer to the university that you have the English requirement needed. Some schools that take only international students is a really good question. So from memory, Hearts, as we've heard tonight, and wonderful presentation there from David Prowse, kind of talking to you all about the perks and the benefits of these newer medical schools that are open to just international students. Another new one that's opening almost immediately is Twickenham University as well. They have international students only. There is, I'm going to double check this list in a moment, but there are definitely some others that are open to just international students. But the essence that David said is that these universities start as international students only and then move towards a hybrid model once they've been able to gain NHS funding. So always check these websites, because even if universities were international only last year, check their websites, because that will be the most up-to-date information, because they might have some changes and they might now welcome home students, or universities that only welcomed home students might now welcome international students. The policies for selection. So if you're applying for this October, I would say universities will tend to update their web pages around mid-spring in towards the summer. So definitely keep a check on that to know where exactly are international only. But even if some are not international only, you can still apply directly to even more. So universities like Brunel University London, University of Lancashire, Buckingham University, all of these do accept UK and international students, and you can apply to them directly on their websites, so you can circumvent that limit of 4. Is volunteering in a library okay? Absolutely. You know, a lot of these experiences, the volunteering aspect here just demonstrates your commitment to something. And medicine is a vocation. You are dedicating and committing the rest of your life to the service of others. And volunteering is an example that you are already doing that with the skills and the knowledge that you have to date at your age. So volunteering in a library is a great example of that. It's not clinical, but as we've both said, you don't need it to be clinical. We just need to see that you are developing your people-facing skills. So it's how you reflect upon it and how you talk about it that will be really, really important. I personally, over the years, have seen students talk really openly and enthusiastically about their work experience in local takeaways, in market stalls, in shoe shops, all of which nothing to do with medicine, nowhere near clinical grounds, but have led them to success, and they are now medical students. So it's how you talk about it and how you reflect upon it and how it has taught you the skills that you will then benefit from as a future doctor. We've had a few questions about this. I have responded to some, but I just want to make sure I answer this one live just to make it quicker as well. As an IB student, does it matter if your extended essay is in a subject not directly related to medicine? Same for the extended project if you are doing A-levels. And it does not matter, because the skills that you've developed in doing your extended essays are the research, the writing, the argumentation, the evaluation. So you've still got something to talk about if you wanted to talk about your undergraduate readiness and your higher order skills. Obviously, if students have done something that is medicine related, it might give them something else to talk about in a personal statement or in an interview if they wanted to talk about their enjoyment of medical sciences, for example. But that does not mean that there is a disadvantage if you didn't do that. If anything, you can still talk about the skills that you have gained by doing it in the first place. Importance of IB extended essay, just answered that one. So I'm just flying through these now. Any others? Okay. So I think a question here about is Hert's an integrated curriculum. So when I was listening to David talk, it made me feel like it's integrated. Definitely go onto their website and look at their curriculum in more detail than what was just talked about in brief bullet points on the slides. You'll start to see what they talk about the structure of the program, what they do in different years of the program, to get a true feel of what that looks like. And as I mentioned, we'll have plenty of webinars throughout the year which talk about what is traditional, what is integrated, what is problem-based learning. Really, really encourage you to look out for those, because I think it's really important to get a true grasp of what each type of teaching style is to give you the best possible awareness, and then you can then choose which is your preferred way of learning. Apologies. How competitive are hospital placements after FY1 and FY2? So I'm not the best person to ask about this, but I can put you in the right direction of where to look at those resources. I think they are competitive, and there are going to be, of course, specialties that tend to have lots of students potentially, or future doctors looking towards them. So I feel like I hear lots of people talk about cardiothoracics, psychiatry, sometimes even general medicine as well. So it might be that there are more applicants per se than there might be kind of spaces in the core or higher specialist training. But if you look on, if you go into Google or other search engines and type in words like foundation programs, core specialist training, there'll be plenty of information from sources like the BMA. Look at places like BMJ, NHS websites as well. Foundation programs is a website which goes into the foundation program in so much detail as well. So I encourage that you have a look at those. But in terms of getting into medical school at university, those kinds of questions you are not needed to know now. You know, these medical schools aren't going to ask you your exact specialty route. If anything, they're quite happy to have students open-minded because there'll be so many types of medicine you will need to know as you go through your general medicine route. So, you know, to talk so passionately and only fixate on an area of medicine like pediatrics or oncology now might not necessarily be as beneficial than you talking about your interest in the human body as a general. How would you prepare for MMI interviews? Great question. So this is, I guess, there's twofold practice here where it's learning about what types of interview styles are going to be asked. So in my earlier slides, I talked about some different stations that there might be themes on: communications, breaking bad news, so like acting a situation. There could be empathy, data calculation, and administration of drugs. It could be so much. MediPortal, you know, as I said, we do interview practice with students. We also have interview tuition. And students who join us for this, you know, we have a 100,000 word guidebook to interviews, which goes through upon page after page after page, all of the types of questions with hundreds of examples of interview questions that you might actually be asked. So one part of your preparation could be reading and learning and internalizing ideas for questions that you would theoretically or metacognitively answer. The second part of the preparation is actually giving it a go and practicing. And the circuits that we offer are really, really interesting because the questions are, you know, we write questions for universities, so we're incredibly insightful and experienced in that front. But the practice that we deliver have 20 stations, and the students will be going around the circuit in pairs. So every student will have 10 stations where they answer the questions, and 10 where they witness their partner answer the questions. And we find that the feedback is abundantly positive because they say that you learn most by teaching. And the same is true here, where you learn from witnessing somebody else answer the question about where they went well, what could they have done to improve their answer, and then that can help inform you to enhance your own answer. So as well as the feedback that you'd get from the interviewer, you can also provide feedback to the interviewees and will help you with your own practice as you progress forward as well. So definitely practice, but also the pre-interview preparation and the reading and the research as well. Both of those together should be the passport to success. Okay, final questions, and then we're going to call it for the night. We have international students. Are they able to apply to the same number of residency positions as UK students? Again, for a definite answer, I am going to direct you towards those websites I mentioned, and feel free to email through, and I'm happy to send you the exact links for those. To my understanding, international students, because you'll be applying to these as an employed doctor, you should have the opportunities. There will be limited numbers of places across the different systems, and there might be different agreements or understandings based on the different hospitals or the different regions of the UK, but you should be able to have wide breadth of application opportunities. Oxford puts more value in GCSEs and A-levels. Yes, that is true. So GCSEs is much more important than A-levels, but UCAT is much more important as well. So for Oxford, they usually look at a 50-50 split between GCSEs and UCAT. Now, if students are international and they don't have GCSEs, that is not a problem, but just be aware they then put double emphasis on the UCAT. So this is an example, as we would, I think, relate into a previous question about those that are A-level focused, those that are GCSE focused. Oxford is GCSE focused, more GCSE focused than Cambridge, but if students don't have GCSEs, then it becomes almost exclusively UCAT focused. Okay, 3 more questions. After 5 or 6 years of undergraduate medical school, is 2-year foundation course mandatory if we're interested to go to the US? Really good question. If your future definite aim is that you want to progress to the US for residency and you would want to have an established working future there, then I believe you are able to move over and do the USMLEs 1, 2, and 3 from medical school onwards. I would always recommend speaking with the advisors once you're in UK medical universities because they will know the exact answers. But if there is an inclination that you might want to consider returning back to the UK at any point in your working future, or to keep those options open, or even the transferability of a UK degree and profession to another country, I'd maybe argue that there could be a benefit of you undertaking that foundation year as a minimum and then use that as a launch pad to look elsewhere. But as I said, that's definitely a question for more experienced and knowledgeable advisors at that professional stage than myself. You know, as I'm very expert in helping students get into university, I am not the voice of authority, unlike others in universities who will know more information about that next step. If international students decide to stay and work in the NHS, are there any limitations or additional hoops they need to jump through? Good question. No, because you'll have a UK degree, so you'll if you do study in the UK and you want to remain here, you have a UK degree. That is the biggest factor to have. Students who have degrees from overseas who try to then come into UK, they have more hoops to jump through, like conversion examinations, English tests, and so on. But the fact that you've done it through the UK, you'll circumvent those. Definitely, again, a question for those universities and the professional advisors in that stage of that preparation. But as you're going through this pathway of a UK medical degree, that will certainly streamline that for you without the need to have those, as I said, the conversions. You have that recognised degree already. And final question about Cambridge certificates C1 and C2, what grades do you need? This will differ by the university, and I wish I had a simple answer for you. But like the IELTS, like all of the other qualifications, each university will stipulate what they need at the different levels. So I would encourage you, so if you go onto the university website, so what I sometimes do is just go onto a Google or a search engine and type in X university name, medicine, and English language requirements. It should then take you, as long as it's the undergraduate page and not the postgraduate page, make sure you're on the right level. It'll then tell you what grades you would need for either the specific program or for the category or band of the program. You'll find that medicine will be amongst some of the highest scores they require compared to other programs. So just one thing to say for me at the very end is to thank you all so much for sticking around. We've had so many wonderful questions, and you've been with me now for nearly 2 hours, and I am so appreciative of you for hearing us out about how the Medic Portal can help, hearing from Dr. David Prowse about Herts Medical School, and the invite is still there. If you do have any further questions after this call, please do reach out to us there at info@themedicportal.com, and I and the team will be really, really happy to help advise you further. So thank you all so much. Have a wonderful rest of your evening and days ahead, and look forward to hopefully speaking to some of you soon in perhaps a future private consultation. So thank you all so much, and good luck with your applications as well. Have a wonderful evening. Thank you.